All right, guys, we have time for about 10 questions. I've already introduced the coaches to you guys. You guys know who these guys are. They've been helping you out all week. The questions that we ask, they don't necessarily have to be related to the content that we talked about. It can be any general questions related to table tennis. Hemming, do you want to record? Okay, Jonathan does a fabulous job recording. Record?
Oh, my face, that's record. No, you can just swipe.
There we go.
Not all the time, just when I think.
All right, how about, that's good. How about if we start with you, Hemming? I got a question for you. Tell us about your experience at the Olympics in 2016 and 2020, and tell the players here, maybe some of the key points that you had moving toward the Olympics as far as your preparation, and then also as far as your performance at the Olympics.
So my first Olympics was 2016 in Brazil. Second one was 2020/2021 in Tokyo. And both of them were different in a way. The first one was like, okay, I don't know what to expect. I'm hella excited, but let's see what happens. For me personally, not growing up in a country that is, making a living from playing table tennis, I didn't go to the Olympics with this mindset of, I'm going to win the Olympics. I'm going to be an Olympic champion. It didn't feel in my reality, but in its own way, I'm like, okay, I've done training my whole life as a kid to get up to here. Let's enjoy the moment. Tokyo was a similar experience in that way, but it was also different because it's like I started to feel the end of my career coming, and that's when it was also like, all right, it's COVID. There's not going to be many people there. Let's really enjoy the whole experience as it is. The biggest part for me wasn't actually the experience itself. It was everything I had to do to get there, because that's what made me really appreciate it. All the hard times I had to go through, the times where I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get here. I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but I also feel like it's possible. Does that answer the question? No.
Great. Next question. You got one, Jonathan? No? Okay, you're just giving him a thumbs up. Okay. Yes, Royce. How do you maintain your composure when you're ahead and you've already blown your lead? Do you have a choice of a coach? No? All right. Seth is rising to the occasion.
Okay, let's see if I can not speak too loud, because this thing's pretty loud. So I feel like a lot of us would have really good answers for this, because there's a lot of different mental tactics and a lot of different things you can do to improve your mental during a match. But typically when I have students or I'm coaching, something that really works that I found is to have a strategy of like 2 or 3 different things that you're trying to do and just stick to them. It's kind of like let's say you're getting along in the match, and as you get further and further, you kind of start to lose your mind because you get closer and you get more nervous. If you have those like 2 or 3 strategies, like go to his backhand, or keep your serve short, or make the opening loop with lots of spin, or stay, whatever it may be, if you can just keep reiterating those to yourself, then that usually kind of leads you like a rope that you can just follow. And even though you're super nervous, you can just trust that process. Even though you might miss it, you're still like, it's fine. Like, I'm just going to continue with this process because I know it's what's going to lead to like me winning the match. So that's something I found helps.
So this is a really interesting one, because we all go through it at some point. When we're losing, we're like, oh, everything sucks. So the question is, how do we maintain composure under pressure when we're winning and we don't want to blow our lead? I actually got this one from Lily Zane. It's always tell yourself it's 0-0 no matter what score it is. So I could be 3-love up, 5-love up, but in my head I'm like 0-0. Because that mentality you have when you start the match is like, I want to hunt for every point, I really want this point. And you need to have that from start to finish, because the match isn't finished until it is finished. A lot of people also, they find what works They get to that lead and then they start trying different things. When in a match, you want to be trying to find what works and what doesn't work, and obviously finding whatever works. If lobbing against my long worked, I'd do that. It probably doesn't, but you get the point is, you want to find what works and stick to it, ideally to the end. If it really keeps working, you keep it boring, you keep doing the same thing. It isn't about winning pretty, it's about winning ugly.
Absolutely.
Okay, Royce, this is directed at you. But you asked about what to do to keep your composure in general. And one thing I tell people when I'm coaching them is to breathe. And you know all about breathing, I know you do. And I do the same thing. Between points, winning or losing, take some deep breaths. You can just blank your mind, take some deep breaths, then think about what you're gonna do.
Great. Next question. Fiona, you have a good one? Kenzie? No? All right. AJ. So yesterday I mentioned that an ideal number of matches, in my opinion, is 20 matches a week. Most coaches don't recommend that many. Personally, I love game application, and I feel like playing games is really, really important. Why? Because it does help you a lot with your knowledge of practice. If you can clearly picture when you lost to Gary, when you beat Fiona, when you lost to Koki, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this happened, then I feel like you're training with knowledge as opposed to just training in general. Now, your question specifically was, how much should you be training versus playing matches? All right, so I'm gonna let one of them answer that question. Anybody have a good ratio for him? Okay, Chance?
So we had a similar question last week also, and it varies a little bit based on how often you practice. So if you're playing every day or if you're playing multiple times a day, you can play a lot more matches without having to worry about, doing as many drills because you're going to be practicing more, obviously. But if you're only playing a couple times a week, say if you're playing 2 or 3 times a week, then you probably want to spend the bulk of your time on doing drills and spend, maybe if you're doing 2 or 3 2-hour sessions per week, you can spend an hour and a half of each of those sessions on doing drills and making your warm-up and working on your technique and your footwork, etc., etc. And then maybe the last half hour of each session you can play some matches. I think most people go drastically in one direction or the other, and it's not good to only do drills, but it's also really not good to only do matches, because then you're not going to be able to work on your foundational skills, your technical skills, and your footwork and your strokes, and being able to generate more quality, right? So you want to really focus on that, but if you don't play any matches at all, then you're not going to be able to implement those things into the game. So you really want to focus more on the drills, but still playing some matches.
Great answer, Chance. And one other thing that I want to mention as it relates to playing matches is I personally feel that for most players in the country, probably 90% of players, they can actually enhance their concentration if they turn almost every drill into a match. So when we do short training, I would say short push, short push, short push, short push. Most of the players that train with us on a daily basis, they're probably about 80% of the way focused. And I'll say, okay guys, every time the ball hits the net and it drops over, why aren't we getting it? So I'll turn it into a game and I'll say, okay, we're gonna do match play for the next 20 minutes and it's short. And the only way to score a point in these games is if somebody gets a net ball that you don't return. Now what does it do? It shifts their focus and they're all diving on the table trying to save the net ball, like desperately trying to save the net ball, right? So what did that do? It changed their focus from practice mentality to game mentality. Same thing for forehand counter loop. We'll do forehand counter loop, and then I'll say, okay, do backhand counter loop half table against half table. And guess what? They're about 80% of the way focused. Da-da, 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 da-da. I'm looking at him going, this doesn't feel like a game in my mind. Okay, guys, we are playing top table, backhand half table, against backhand half table. And if you win, you're going to move up a table, and if you lose, you're going to move down a table. Guess what happens? They give more variation, they go wider, they go slower, they go faster. They're more adjustable, more engaged. Why? Because they've turned counter looping into match play. Right? So a lot of times people say, well, we've got practice and we've got matches. We don't implement this too much in the camps, but for our daily training, we implement a lot of match play, even within the drills. So that's one way of blending the two together, so you get the competitiveness of a match, the focus of a match, but still you're working on the drills at the same time. Okay. Yes, Gary.
So, what's our strategy if our only access to play is match play and they will not allow practice?
That's the scenario that I was in until I was 21 years old. So until I was 21, I went to the club and there was no drills at all. It was only match play. So what do you think I did? I played matches. But what can you work on during match play? You can work on your own serve. You can work on looping the half long. You can work on reading the spin on the short serve and making good decisions when to play short push, when to play flip. You can work on blocking to a good location, getting them out of position, and then playing counter loop. You can work on everything in match play. You just can't isolate one thing and say, I really need to work on my backhand flip, and Jonathan serves every single time deep to your middle. You're not going to be able to work on that, right? So if I had a choice, match play or practice, for a year, I'd actually choose match play. Why? Because you're working on everything. Sometimes it's frustrating because you feel like, well, I can't just detail out my forehand counter loop for an hour. Sure, but you can work on everything. I think it's a matter of your perspective. And as you know, you do have a robot at home, so that's an option as far as isolating and working on specific things. Chance also has a great one. Go for it.
Somewhat similar to Samson, I also didn't have a lot of access to a lot of practice partners or a lot of opportunity to train in terms of like organized drills. And a couple of the things that helped me a lot when I was developing was I did a lot of serve practice at home, just working on my own serve and trying to develop that, and that helped me move up through the ranks really quickly because my serve was very strong. The other thing that I did quite a bit of was I did shadow strokes. So I would imagine a drill in my mind and work on being able to make the movements correctly and working on being able to have like good weight transfer and good balance as I was making those movements. And then when I did play, it felt a lot more comfortable.
So something I actually picked up from Samson, because I grew up in this area, was he talked about exactly what he said was the limited access to practice and just playing against people at the club. And he said that you could find opponents who do specific things. Like there's people who lob, there's people who chop, there's people who block, or if you serve short, they always push long. Or if you serve short, they always push short. And you can kind of use that to work on a specific skills. Like you might lose the game, but at least you get to work on your flip because you knew they were going to push short. So that's a nice way you can target specific things that you want to practice in match play.
I mentioned this last week, but one of the things, like Samson says, you can work on everything, but I think if you're going to the club to play matches, it's impossible to think about everything. So you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, or if someone has a different opinion, but I really would just pick 2 or 3 things maybe that I want to work on that night. Looping half long. Looping half long is a biggie on the serve return. Like I would always think about that. As I was driving to the club, I'd think, okay, I'm going to make sure I loop every half long serve this time. And it just, I will say it with what Seth just said too. There's one person, well, you can play, everybody wants to play someone better than you. Everybody thinks I have to play players that are better than me in order to get better. Well, that's not true. You can apply that exactly to what Seth just said. Sometimes maybe you're playing somebody that's not as good as you and you can beat them easily. So work on something. They're going to do something and you're going to be able to work on maybe 1 or 2 things in particular with that lower level person.
So Blake just said what I was going to say. And what he said was, everyone wants to play better players. And there is a bit of a misconception that for you to get better, you always need to be playing with better players. And let me tell you, that's not true. Because I spent a season in Germany where I was easily the worst player in the whole group. And I spent what I actually got used to, because training is essentially building habits that you're taught. What I got used to doing was just being a goalkeeper. They're putting so much pressure on me on the serve, on the return, I'm just defending all the time, and I got really passive. But then when I came back to Australia and I spent more time practicing set patterns, knowing what I wanted to practice, and practicing that against players that weren't as good, as well playing matches where I was winning at least 65% of the time. That really shot my confidence up. And it may not sound like much, but we're humans and we thrive on confidence. We thrive on emotion. And if we're seeing ourselves play with someone who isn't as good, maybe they add a little bit of pressure on us in a match situation too. But then you start seeing yourself, for example, you want to work on serve and then open with your backhand, right? With a little bit of match pressure, a little bit of pressure from your opponent, you serve, you practice that again and again and again. You've now embedded in yourself, okay, I'm really good at that. Then you can start doing that against anyone, even better players. But if you start doing that with players that are way better than you, there's so many variables, they can do more things, it's hard to purely, in a match situation, focus on that one thing. So probably best thing you can definitely do, play matches against players that are not as good as you. Because then you can start to predict their patterns, less pressure, and you can practice that thing you want to practice.
Yeah, when they're too good, they shot block and you fall down trying to get to the ball. And then they do it again and again and again.
And you can focus on anything except what you want to practice, right?
All right, I want to hear, if they want to chat, I want to hear a couple comments maybe from Jeff, Jonathan, and Shigong. If you guys want to mention anything as it relates to the training or any experience that you have. Jeff, did you have anything you wanted to mention? As far as your training and back in your training days, or anything that you observed that you kind of want to comment to them or give them any feedback?
Actually, I was curious because Hamin said that for him, like he played 2 Olympic Games, and that could be like the dream or the goal for all of the kids here. And then for him, that was the most important part of his process, right? So I was wondering if he had any like message, or he had something special that he did that he felt like, oh no, this was really important for my path, for my journey to reach to the Olympics, for everyone, right? But especially for the kids that dream to play Olympic Games one day. So you said that your path was the most important. Did you have anything specific, or was it a combination of a bunch of things, or what would you tell them?
Great question. I just wanted to wake him up. No, good question. So at the time I didn't know it, but now I'm pretty much very big on, okay, how does sport help you as a human being, as a in your life? And the answer is that playing table tennis, regardless of how you feel today, if you won, you're like, oh my god, I'm the king, I'm the queen. Or if you lost and you're like, no, I suck. You're gonna feel that you're gonna feel that in different waves non-stop. If you keep going and you don't give up, you will learn a lot of life skills that school and a lot of these places don't teach you. So that was the biggest part. Like, that was the biggest part for me. Coming out of that, it's like, oh, I've learned how to deal with pressure. I've learned how to accept loss, learn how to win and still not get on too much of a high horse from that. And there'll be countless other lessons that I've learned as well from that.
Jonathan, do you have any training tips or anything that you wanted to mention?
At least from my experience in Sweden, we do a lot of drills and also a lot of matches, but we're trying to differentiate if it is drills or if it is matches. And when we are trying to play matches, we play to win. Because often if you're not focusing on winning, and maybe you're focusing on you want to play backhand this way or forehand this way, you're turning your attention too much inwards, which takes attention from what your opponent is doing. Because match play, it's always relative. I mean, whatever you do, the opponent will have an answer to it or not. But if something is good or not is dependent on if the opponent is missing or not. So yeah.
Shigong, any tips for them?
I want to say in United States, a lot of players, including adults, kids, they only want to play the people better than him or her. That's the things I don't agree, because during match, when you play a little lower than you will be very, very nervous. So the only way you can train and practice match, you beat them very badly. So you build your confidence. When you see them, okay, I can beat them easily. So if you play more lower than then you can build your confidence. During the real match, you will beat them easily. So I hope my students, I know some couple students, they're only looking for a good player to play. I want them to change their bad habit.
Excellent. And just like any other skill, as far as winning close games or winning big titles, being able to completely devastate your rival and win 11-3, 11-2, 11-3, that is also a skill. Most people don't have the mental discipline to completely destroy their opponent. They win the first game 11-2, they're up 6-0 in the second game, and now all of a sudden they start experimenting with this and that and that and this. And then next thing you know, it's 9-9. They pull out the second game, and then, they might win, they might lose the third game, but they have this kind of casual approach. This truly takes the hyper-focused state, where you're really so much in the zone that you can play somebody 100 points, 200 points, 300 points lower than you and completely shut them out 3 games in a row. And that should be your goal for people lower than you, people at your level, and people higher than you. You want to be able to shut them out. But if you have this habit that as you're winning the match easy, you decide, well, it's time to experiment with this new serve that I've been working on. Well, it's time to just block and let them attack a little bit. Next thing you know, the tides turn and the match could go south for you. So just like they said, playing lower players is a skill, and it's the skill of being able to maintain your focus even when you're absolutely destroying the opponent. Because just because the first game went like that doesn't mean it's going to continue. This table, very first match on Saturday. Did anybody see that first match? Okay, 11-1 the first game. The guy won the second game 11-0, so he's up 2-0. Okay, he's only lost 1 point in the first 2 games. And then all of a sudden, he loses the next 2 games. Have you ever seen that before? The guy won 11-1, 11-0, and then he dropped the next 2 games. I was running the tournament, so I didn't watch everything, but I have to think that this had to be a concentration level. Imagine, Koki, if you win the first game 11-1, are you very focused going into the second game? You're not, right? Imagine if you won the second game 11-0. Are you very focused going into the third game? You're not, because you feel like, oh, this is an easy match. Maybe I'll beat him 11-0 again. Anything works. It just seems like I can't miss. And then all of a sudden, the other guy changes his tactics, and then he comes back. So just like the coaches are saying, playing lower players is important. Playing higher players is important. But really being able to implement your playing system on them and be able to focus on the right details, this is important. We've got time for 2 more questions. Yep, go for it.
So I don't know if this is a New York thing or not, but if you have a coach for, let's say, 2 years, paying a fair amount of money, you realize that you're not getting what you want out of it, that you want to switch, and it's within the same club. It always seems to, I've seen multiple sports, it always seems to be like this uncomfortable feeling that coach really doesn't want you to go here, go there, and who's looking at your pocket. So what's the best, any of you guys have thought of the best way to approach
Yeah, definitely ask one of these guys. Yeah.
I know it doesn't have to be this level.
I mean, we switch back and forth students. You want to ask any specific one?
No, I don't care.
All right, go for it, Seth.
I think you should just be open about it. Yeah, have an open conversation. Talk to the coach you're with and say like, hey, this other coach, I feel like they have some good things that could really help me. The coach has to see it from your perspective. Like, you're just trying to get better. And if they have beef with that, then that's their problem. So, I mean, then just live with it, I guess.
We actually spoke about this the other day with a tennis coach. So let's say the typical scenario is you pay a coach, I don't know, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, monthly, or whatever the setup is. It's life is always a value to value exchange in my eyes. So you pay the coach, you're expecting results. In most cases, you're expecting an outcome. Your game improves. That person delivers to you what's going on. How can I improve? And if that need's not met, one's going to be unhappy. On the flip side, I've also turned down people that have said, hey, I'm going to pay you $250 an hour, but I just really don't want to coach that guy. Not because he's a bad guy necessarily, but because I don't feel like I can help him, or I don't believe he has the work ethic. So really being brutally just upfront about it, saying, hey, I don't feel like I'm getting what I want out of it, can we change it? Or if it's not a possibility, it's like, what would I do? I would just find another coach. Or I would accept that if someone came to me and said, hey, this isn't working out, I'm going to someone else. Because I guess I personally don't see it as a personal thing. You didn't deliver what that person wanted, so if it stayed and that person was not happy, it's going to be more uncomfortable. So sometimes you got to do what's uncomfortable.
And actually, sometimes leaving a coach is actually a good thing for them. In the last 15 years, I've coached hundreds, if not thousands of people, and a lot of my students have left for different reasons. One student would start trumpet lessons, one student wanted to go over to this other coach, one student just decided, hey, maybe table tennis is too much of a commitment or too expensive or whatever. So some students have just stopped, and some students have actually shifted to a different coach. But it actually is good for the coach to also be able to get feedback if they want feedback from you as far as, hey, this other coach can help me with these things. And it's not like you have to permanently leave that coach. Maybe you go and you learn from this coach for 1 month or 2 months, and then maybe you'll be back to your original coach. So, all right, we got time for about one more question. Yeah.
So tournament play is a lot more different than practice. So how long does it take to adapt to the pressure of the tournament? And how long does it take to convert what you learned in practice and how you play in practice to the tournament?
Good question. Who are you asking?
Jeff, and you.
You can only pick one. We're running out of time. Jeff. We'll pick Jeff. All right.
All right, for you, we talked the other day. You've been playing for like what, 6 months, 7 months, right? So for you, it might take. I mean, it's different for every person. Like have their own time, right? Sometimes they can really apply some of the things right away. Even like you practice something, you right away when you play like top table or when you play like league, you can apply some of the concepts. So that's something very personal. There's not like, oh, it should take like this long, right? Everyone has their own pace. I think it's a matter of like how much effort or how much you're trying to apply the things, or how much serious you take practice, right? So, oh no, you really need to focus on this. And when you play the match, now I know that I need to get better on this, so I'm gonna try to apply it. Now it's like top table, I can try to apply some of the concepts. So I think everyone has their own pace, but it's a matter of how much you're trying to actually like apply and then try to get the things together, because the better you can play, the more you can imagine when you're practicing, right? Oh, this is a match player. Imagine, oh, it's 9-9, right? Feel the pressure. And even when it's just practice, when you go to a tournament, you're gonna feel more comfortable and you're gonna feel more confident to apply the things that you work on.
Good answer. And I said only one person was going to answer, but I'm actually going to answer too. I mean, you can too if you want. So many people, when they play tournaments, they talk about, I can't adjust to that guy's weird serve, and I can't adjust to this guy's odd block, and this guy's timing is weird, and I don't like playing against this and that. For sure, there's an adjustment to every person that you play, but they also need to adjust to you. Okay? So develop skills that even though you can't return Gary's serve 5 times every game, guess what? He can't return your serve 5 times every game. So instead of focusing on this guy or this girl or this person is so weird, develop your own skills to put pressure on them. Angela, stand up. Stand right here. Okay. Do you mind if I talk about you? Is that okay? I never coached Angela before, but yesterday she asked me for a lesson. So I said, okay. So right before the lesson, she went over there and she lost to a chopper. And so I come over and then I say, okay, Angela, talk to me about your match. And she's just kind of like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to play a chopper. I don't know this. I don't know that. I don't know this. I don't know that. I said, stop focusing on what you don't know and start focusing on what she is bad at and give her problems with your game. Angela's like, what do? I said, I want you to serve these serves. I want you to hit to these locations. And it doesn't guarantee a win, but it puts you in the best possible seat to win. Okay? So what happened? Angela went out there. She still didn't really know clearly what was going on, but she served the right serves, and she hit to the right locations, and she played, can I say it? She played pretty bad. But guess what? Her opponent also played pretty bad because she served the right things and she hit to the right locations, and her opponent was also like, ooh, I played bad. So instead of just us feeling like, oh, we can't adjust to this person or that person, we have to be able to serve and hit the right locations and hit the right shots to make them adjust to us as well. Okay, thank you, Angela. So I think that it's a difference in the mindset. The mindset is, I can't adjust to them. Well, develop things to make him adjust to you, focus on what you're doing well, and then hit him with those serves in those locations. Hemming, did you have anything to mention? Fabulous.
I mean, your original question, how long does it take to get good at dealing with pressure? I mean, how long does it take to take a baby to walk? As long as it's... Have a guess.
1 year.
What if you can't walk in a year? Do you stop or do you keep trying?
You need to see it develop.
Right. But the point is, you keep going until you get it, right? So a couple of things you said. You said that you don't have to play well. Angela played bad and she still won. So a couple of misconceptions there on how to deal with it. Like, you don't have to play good to win. You just got to play better than the opponent. You got to play solid. Our egos can get in the way when we're like labeling, can't beat this guy, can't beat this girl, or I can't lose to this guy. When really understand anything can happen in sport. It's not a game of, it's not a set game. Even if you're a better player on paper, you can still win or lose. How do you to deal with pressure? You really need to understand it's a different skill set to use the skills you have in training and be able to transfer that into a match. So the purpose of training is build skill sets, build confidence and skill sets. Because in a match, you don't want to be thinking, how do I execute this skill? You want to train in a way you already have confidence in it, and then in a match, it's, all right, I am feeling nervous, great, accept that, and it's like, how do I find solutions to beat this person? What are they not good at? What is winning me points? When you can get really focused on that and accept whatever emotions you have, the pressure starts having less power on you, and that's when you can start focusing on, what do I do on this next point? That's when you stop focusing on, what if I lose? Oh my God, this pressure's so bad. That's when you play bad under pressure because you're focused on anywhere else except the current moment. But reality is that you can feel as much pressure as you want, but if you're focused on the present moment, you will still play well.
Good, excellent. Thank you, coaches and practice partners, for your explanations. And as I mentioned all last week, don't wait until Wednesday, or don't feel like, man, I missed my opportunity. I can't ask a single more question. Every time we go over there and we're talking about the different skill set, it's a great time to ask questions. Also, when the coach comes to your table, that's a great time to ask questions. Most of the time, I'm around for part of lunch break, so that's another great time to ask questions. So don't feel bad to ask questions. Like I said, it doesn't even have to be related to the topic for the week. Once I call all your names, we're going to head to the tables and we're going to do our warm-ups from the tables. After that, we've got a forehand and backhand warm-up, and then we've got 2 footwork drills to start us off with. The first drill is going to be the last drill that we finished with, which is 2 backhands, 2 forehands, and I want you to do a few rallies from close and then a few rallies from mid-distance. Our second footwork drill is going to be random against backhand, and we're doing a few rallies from close, a few rallies from mid-distance, a few rallies from close, a few rallies from mid-distance. Okay, so wait here till I call all your names, and then you guys can head to the tables for our warm-up. Table 1 is Zaid and Max. Table 2 is Jonathan and Angela.